coming up on the show, we react to Home Assistant password shaming both of us and then attempt to solve an age-old cloud problem. Backups. I'm Chris.
And I'm Alex, and this is self-hosted. The podcast's a middle-aged man now. We're 40.
Yeah, the podcast is feeling like he's still got some pep left in him, but also has a few miles on him. Or her.
Midlife crisis coming up.
Is the podcast, does it have a gender? It's a thing, right? The podcast prefers to be referred to as they.
Podcast pronouns.
Yeah.
There's a title right there, I'll tell you what. Anyway, you were going to tell me about your off-grid solar stuff. We've not heard about that for a while.
We were chatting about this just before we hit record because I'm off-grid and podcasting on solar right now. I was just talking to you actually because you're thinking about getting solar, and I think the thing that people have to wrap their head around is, what are you planning for? Are you planning for like a grid blackout or brownout? Are you planning for going out into the woods? What's your scenario? And then how much battery do you really need versus could you supplement with a generator? Like for me right now, I think I've hit a sweet spot of enough battery capacity that I can run on it for a day or so. And if it's a sunny day out, I can get a 30-40% charge right now in the winter. But I can't get 100% charge off of solar right now. And so I need to run the generator for about an hour once a day right now when I'm off grid. And that's fine. I feel like that's actually a really good spot because the more battery you have, the more generator or solar you're going to need. You can't charge all, you have to have the ability to charge all that stuff up. So I feel like I've kind of hit the sweet spot that because it's winter, we're not getting prime sunshine and I'm only running the generator about once a day. And otherwise we're getting along. I think I'm kind of in that sweet spot. And I think that's something you should think about when you're speccing out your solar system for your house is, what are you covering for? Are you covering for a couple of days of no power? Or do you really just need to cover for a couple of hours? And if it goes longer, maybe you could run a generator for an hour or two.
I think I want to cover just the average daily low-level load of the house. I want to make the house more sustainable. So, like just all the lighting, all the computers that are on in here, whatever that works out to be. My electric bill is normally in a sort of $100 to $120-ish range, so it's not too crazy. And for me, it's about sustainability. And I was watching a David Attenborough program, Our Perfect Planet, the other night. Beautiful 4K HDR on the LG OLED. Oh, it was magical to watch that thing.
Streaming from the Plex server.
Correct. Yeah, through the NVIDIA Shield. You can't help but watch these perfect planet things and be left with a sense of guilt about what humanity's doing to the planet and how we're consuming too many resources and stuff like that. So, I think about how I might be in a position to do something about that as just an individual, when in reality we need to, as a species, collectively actually affect change. But as an individual, there isn't much I can do, but reducing my use of fossil fuels, even by a little bit, feels like a good place to start.
Yeah, I love the idea of even just offsetting the computers that run all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So during the day, I've reached the point where all day long I'm running off the solar power. I'm bringing in more solar power than I am using, which is a great spot to be because that means my home server, all of my stuff is being sustained by the sun. And I'd love to do a similar setup at the studio, a couple of panels on the roof. If I could just bring in 400 watts or so, I could probably cover most of my computer gear that's running 24/7. And, I think about long-term, Alex, say even just 10 years, 15 years down the road, maybe the majority of cars or all cars sold will be electric. How does the grid in the United States, at least, handle that if we don't have some people offsetting their load with solar? It seems like long-term, the direction things are going, between crypto mining and electric cars, there's going to be more demand on the grid than ever. So being able to supplement a little bit might not only just be a nice thing to do for the environment, but also ensure that you have enough power to go around.
Free Bitcoin, baby.
Yep, get that crypto going and maybe spend your time learning. This episode is brought to you by the all-new OVHcloud Guru. They are the leader in learning for the cloud, Linux, and other modern tech skills. Go check them out. They have hundreds of courses and thousands of hands-on labs. Get certified, get hired, get learning at acloudguru.com. You could spend that time mining crypto, or you could spend that time learning job skills and getting hired. But, I think maybe you and I are thinking about off-grid and backup power today because a lot of our listeners' services are down and offline as we record this right now.
That's right, yeah. OVH, one of the largest VPS providers in Europe have suffered a major fire this week, and it's literally taken out one of their data centers and had dramatic effects on some of their other regions, data centers, whatever they called for OVH as well. It's just got me thinking, great, there's another disaster that I hadn't really thought about. What if AWS or DigitalOcean or Linode, what if they catch fire? Oh, that's another one to plan for.
Yeah, the thing that's tricky about OVH is data centers 1 through 4 were all kind of like in the same area. So after midnight on the Wednesday of the week we're recording this, OVHcloud had an alarm go off. The cause as of this recording right now is still unknown. However, the founder and CEO speculated it may have been a UPS fire. And he noted in a video update that he released a couple of days ago that UPS number 7 had been serviced earlier that day. But obviously, more investigation is required. In total, OVH had 4 data centers in this area, and one data center, SBG2, was just totally destroyed by fire. And then part of SBG1 was also damaged. And then SBG3 and 4, they're fine. But as we record, there's still some outages because there's some areas the staff can't get to. There's network issue. There's still some power issues. And there's even the fact that they still have to validate that the cooling system is still fully functional. It's like bad, Alex.
This is a weird one to me because every data center that I've worked near or in some occasions, they've all had argon fire suppressant systems, and just fire was something that you kind of assumed would never get out of control in a data center because it's a controlled environment. There isn't a huge amount of flammable stuff like on a data center floor. It's just metal boxes with some cables and stuff like that, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's kind of surprising to me that it was able to get to this level. I mean, if you look at some of the pictures, and we've got a Reuters article linked in the show notes, that building was toast.
Yeah, the CEO says something about it using older style construction techniques and that the newer buildings that weren't damaged were using the newer style. I wonder if that style is fire suppression, you know?
Yeah, maybe.
Or materials or something. But it kind of got us thinking, like, yeah, we got kind of a sad note in from listener Carrie. He said, my server was in data center 1 and I have lost it, I'm afraid. I didn't have any complete backups because I didn't really have anywhere to back up to. That server already blew my personal self-hosting budget. I feel like I've lost a loved one. I guess I'll get a box at home and I'll have to back up to that from now on, but that's going to get very expensive. That is tricky.
Well, it is. It is going to get expensive, but I would argue that the emotions you're feeling right now are also expensive. Just in a, not dollars and cents necessarily, but they're expensive in a different way emotionally. And only you can quantify how much your data is worth. Right? I mean, I don't know what was on this particular server for you, Kerry, but I certainly know in the past when I've lost data, it hurts. Like genuinely, you spend the next few weeks, months, sometimes longer, wishing you'd done things differently, thinking, oh, if only I'd spent a couple of $100 on a Pi and an external hard drive, and I wouldn't even be in this situation. I mean, if you think about what most typical VPSs are, they are probably less than 100 gig disk, probably only a few gigabytes of RAM or something like that. So we aren't talking about a huge amount of data to back up here. And what I would say is, if you've got no backup, I mean, literally zero, don't try and aim for perfect. Just get a 128 gig USB stick off Amazon and then just get in the habit of downloading your data once a month, once a year even. Because I'm sure right now you wish you'd had something, even if it was 11 months old, you'd have something.
Something I've seen really common is a lot of people these days, when they have cheap cloud hosting, they're going for like a NUC with a disk hanging off it or something that they're syncing to locally and getting that peace of mind by having the data on their local network. And I got to admit, it's kind of what I did for the Jupiter Broadcasting stuff is we have Nextcloud up at Linode, and then we have Nextcloud installed on the server at the Jupiter Broadcasting Studio on the LAN. And we sync the stuff that I really care about. We don't sync everything because it's hundreds of gigs, but locally we actually it will also archive, but so I should probably back up the studio server now that I think about it. But we back up the cloud locally to anything that's not ephemeral, and anything that's not ephemeral we try to keep locally. And then my intention is to back that server up somewhere, Alex's house, Backblaze, I don't know what, but I've got the cloud part covered. I just don't necessarily have the local part fully covered right now, because I ended up, and this is sort of where I connected with what Carrie was saying, is I just ended up with terabytes of data, terabytes. And I don't really know how to even get that offsite over the wire. It's so much data.
Never underestimate, I think the saying goes, the bandwidth of a truck driving down a highway full of hard drives. Get it on a hard drive and mail it to me. That's the best way.
What you're saying is I should pack up the RV and drive a hard drive down to your place. That makes the most sense, right?
You can if you want.
$3,000 backup trip. But, so that's something we all struggle with. But you remember when we went and saw Wendell, how he was implementing at his data center on his LAN, he was backing up his
place was nuts.
Yeah, and he was backing up his client's cloud data for them to his servers, just in case their cloud providers had issues. It's something you do kind of have to think about, is when I'm building something, what is the risk to losing this? Like, there's some things I have on the cloud that if they were lost, it'd be inconvenient, but we could regenerate from source material.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything.
Yeah, it is about evaluating the, I don't want to say like opportunity cost or whatever, but everything has a cost. And, photos, for example, are irreplaceable. You can't recreate those moments, videos, whatever. But, a PDF with an invoice of some work you did 10 years ago, maybe that, okay, it might be nice to have it, but that's all, just nice. But, the cost of a one-time backup offsite to a pen drive or something like that is so small compared to the amount of time you're going to spend noodling after you've lost some data whilst you reconstruct what was actually on that file system and remember, oh yeah, that was on that box as well. I lost that too. And some of that stuff won't occur to you until years later.
That's very true. And it feels you just feel like like somebody's cut a hole out of you sometimes. And I think that, especially when it comes to the pictures, I have opted to leave on, for the iPhone members of my family, our iCloud photo backup for everybody. I even ended up paying for like some sort of family storage plan, so that way I knew, because my mom's on there and, my wife, and I just wanted to know that everybody's photos were backed up, even though I also back them up.
My phone, every picture I take goes off to Nextcloud in 100% quality, but Google Photos also duplicates everything.
I'm off the Google Photos sauce because I'm using the iCloud photo, but it's like, trading one service for the other.
I mean, there are arguments to be made for Google's privacy policies versus Apple's, but I'm not sure I fully trust either, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of gambling that Apple's are a little better and that they're not mining it for data, but...
No, make no mistake, bro. Apple are mining you for your cash.
Right. No kidding. No kidding. And we have talked about Google Photos alternatives, and it's not that I'm not going to implement one of those. That's actually been my intention. But I still feel like I get some value out of just paying Apple to back that thing up because they are so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, photos are it. Like, pretty much everything else, I'm comfortable how I back it up. Although I know there's a couple of areas that I could probably do better. I mean, do you feel like there's an area where if you were to audit your backups right now, you'd look at it and go, oh no, Alex, you got to fix this?
Yeah, I do. So the last couple of months have been a bit crazy for me. My wife and I had our first daughter, and she came a little bit early, and she spent a couple of months in the hospital. So things have kind of been decaying whilst I've been there.
Congratulations, an official on-show congratulations. Yay.
Yay. Da-da-da.
I've known, but this is the first time you said anything on the show, so it's exciting.
Yeah, I didn't want to go public until she was home, just in case, because anyway, she's home, she's healthy, everything's good with the world. So yeah, I purchased the Helios as to be my on-site replication backup device.
Right.
And then when everything went down in January and Ella was born, I was in the middle of rebuilding my server at that point, because that's when the whole GVTG thing started playing up and not working quite as I'd hoped. So, I was at the hospital most of the day, but I'd come back here for 2 or 3 hours just to unwind and just mess around with hardware and stuff. and I never quite got to putting my backups back in place. And it's one of those things you think, oh, I'll get to it. And then before you know it, a year later, you have a problem. You think, crap.
I never got to it. Yeah.
I do have plans, which we'll share with you soon, as to what's going to replace the Helios in that situation. But I'm tight-lipped for now. But we do have an upcoming segment on backups that will hopefully give you some ideas and inspiration.
Linode.com/SSH. Go there to get $100 in Linode credit. This could be the opportunity to try out Linode. Linode.com/SSH. You also support the show. Linode is how we host in the cloud. We've built all kinds of backend services for the show and for Jupiter Broadcasting on Linode. And I have a peace of mind knowing that Linode has great support. So if I ever get stuck, well, I know they're going to take care of me. In fact, Linode just received the People's Choice Stevie Award for favorite customer service in the computer services category. That's huge, you guys. Having great support has been one of the key things that people write into our show when they switch and tell us about Linode. They have 11 data centers worldwide. In 2016, they became their own ISP and have full control over their own network and have built out super fast connections to their worldwide data centers. They have a brilliant cloud manager that makes it simple to use Linode if you're a brand new user or if you're a pro. You're going to love what they have. Then there's the pricing. Linode has dialed this in. The value is nuts. They have systems, of course, they're like $5 a month, right? But you can do different combinations depending on what you need. Maybe you need a lot of memory or a lot of CPU. Maybe you need GPU. Maybe you need several GPUs. Maybe you need it all. I got to be honest, we recently just decided to go all in on our Matrix server because it's getting busier and busier. And it's awesome what Linode lets you do. And even when you need to upgrade an existing machine or clone a machine or snapshot, it's all just brilliant in their cloud manager. I'm really impressed with the complexity that they can make seem so simple. You know, like I'm managing servers in data centers around the world, and they just make it all seem so intuitive. So I like that. And you can really get a sense of that when you try out our $100 credit. $100! When you go to linode.com/SSH. See what I've been talking about. And of course, you support the show. When you go there and you visit that URL and you use that and you sign up, it tells Linode that our audience is supporting the show and that Linode should keep supporting us. It helps us put these shows out for free. It makes content like this possible. It's the circle of podcasting. Go to linode.com/SSH.
Don't be using that stinking Linux Unplugged Linode code. You've got to be using that self-hosted Linode code.
That's right. Live long. So hashtag SSH, live long, and go to linode.com/SSH.
My Home Assistant box password shamed me this week. Did you get this?
Yes. I did. Did you get it for the SSH add-in? That's what I think I got it for.
Mine was Node Red, I think.
Oh, Node Red. Alex, you're using a bad password with Node Red? Oh,
or maybe even Home Assistant itself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been a bit busy. I didn't actually read it. I just saw the notification and dismissed it. I was like, oh, whatever. I'll get to you later.
I dismissed it and then mine came back. Mine is for the add-on core_SSH, which uses secrets, which have been detected as not secure. Probably a lot of people in the audience are getting this if they're on Home Assistant. It's a new feature, quote unquote, that has been integrated. And frankly, probably a good one.
Yeah, but the internet being the internet, people are pissed. I don't really get this. Maybe I'm just becoming a grumpy old man now I'm a dad. And outrage culture is just, I don't know, I'm just tired of it. So there's a link in the show notes to a post by Troy Hunt, who is an incredibly well-respected security researcher. And he is the guy that is behind the website Have I Been Pwned? And this website is incredible. You can tap in any password into their database, and it'll tell you that, yes, this password is out in the wild. And as Troy puts it, if your password is in this list, I've seen it clear text, which means that the bad guys have seen it clear text.
Right.
So no matter your opinion on how secure you think it is, I guarantee it's out there in the wild somewhere and somebody knows what it is. So don't use that password.
It's actually pretty clever for the Home Assistant developers to build this in. So the way it works is your passwords are hashed. The first 5 characters of that hash, so just the first 5 characters of a hash of your password, are then used to query the Have I Been Pwned website. It then returns a result of possible password hashes that match, and then Home Assistant checks that list against your hash locally. All of that validation is happening on your box.
And what I found really interesting, and Troy goes into full details in the article, he basically goes through the Home Assistant forums thread where people are bitching and moaning and whining about this feature being turned on without their permission. To give you an idea of how, I don't want to say stupid, but honestly, when I was reading this Troy Hunt article, I was like, yeah, this thread is stupid. Someone was complaining it was sending out data over their metered connection.
Right.
He then proceeded to say it's a few bytes.
Like 36 kilobytes, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking 5 times smaller than the average web page load. If you notice that on a metered connection, then you've got problems.
Right. We're not really talking very much data. And it's probably, although we don't know for sure, only happening when you start up Home Assistant or reload the config.
How do you feel about doing this on your local LAN? I mean, I'm definitely guilty of reusing passwords on the internet. I'm certainly guilty of doing it on my LAN.
That seems to be the crux of everyone's argument is my LAN, my rules. I have a safe, trusted environment, and I don't want to have to use good password hygiene. I don't want long passwords that are unique. And I can definitely relate. There's sort of, when you do this for a living, every now and then it's nice to be a little lazy. Like, you know, what's the saying about the guy who makes shoes? His kids always have the worst shoes. You know, like, because you just get home, it's the last thing you want to do, right? It's just the last thing.
Yeah.
So I do understand that. However, this is where I fall down on it. The Home Assistant community is kind of a special case because they're playing around with IoT smart devices that are network connected. There's a higher threat level, a broader threat attack surface, if you will. And so I feel like you have to be a little more secure when you are willing to ride the IoT train, you know, because the problem is any one of those individual devices one day could become compromised. And then that becomes a launching off point where they can go after other devices on your LAN. And we see it happen.
And to that point, Troy actually makes this point in his article that LinkedIn, I mean, we're talking a proper website here, had a data breach because one of their developers home networked had a weak SSH password, which allowed people to pivot through that developer's home network into LinkedIn servers and compromise LinkedIn that way.
Yeah, they brute forced his iMac.
And so, you know, I put myself in that developer's shoes and I think, well, holy crap, someone could pivot into Red Hat from here, and I wouldn't want that. So I think to myself, okay, actually, Troy, you've probably got a point here. I do need to step up my game. And he uses 1Password. I think he's on the advisory board for 1Password. But we talked last episode about Bitwarden. And I really cannot emphasize enough, you know, there are command line clients and stuff like that you can use so you can put it in scripts and do all sorts of fun stuff if you want to. And I think that's going to have to become a 2021 rather late New Year's resolution for me, is to try and use that CLI stuff more on my LAN at least.
Yeah. Good passwords, I think, matter when we're kind of riding the cutting edge of technology. Even if you're not intentionally exposing your LAN to the internet, you never know when some crazy thing could happen. It's unlikely, but it could happen. But really, you also never know if one day somebody's going to rock up onto your Wi-Fi or something, or somebody joins your LAN that you put on intentionally, but they have some misconfiguration or infection. So it's kind of like multiple layers of protecting yourself is the best kind of protection. And I think when you look at logins, you could look at maybe not only unique passwords, but when possible, also using keys to do SSH sign-ins. So that way you have to have maybe a key and a password. And that just takes it a little bit step further. Like that LinkedIn developer, if he had had a decent password or password and a key, then the attackers would have never gotten onto his iMac and then never gotten into LinkedIn. And when the whole COVID lockdown thing started and we had a lot more people all of a sudden working from home, that was one of my first concerns is, well, now all of these corporations are as insecure as people's home networks are. And you never know when that could be an issue as well. I just think as much of a pain in the arse as it is, there's enough tools and we know enough information now that it's worth doing. The only thing I would have changed with how Home Assistant has implemented this is give me an option to turn it off for a bit. You know, I'm not fixing it while I'm out here in the woods.
Silence that checkbox for 7 days or something, you know.
Or until next update even, you know, that could work too.
I do believe they're actually working on making it opt-in or opt-out now. So for what it's worth, the outrage has had some effect on the feature. But I mean, I think it's great. I think anything that we can do, and here's another point about the Home Assistant community being a special case as well, is a lot of people are coming to servers for the first time because of Home Assistant. They're running a box in their house for the first time that's got SSH listening on something, maybe for the first time ever. And anything that Home Assistant can do for those kind of newer users that aren't, enterprise grade buffoons like me, that just reminds them that, hold on, if you're exposing your house to the internet through Nebuchadnezzar, through WireGuard, through whatever it might be, there is some risk. And then when you couple that up with some leaky washing machine that's running an old firmware from 8 years ago, there are risks to these things. And I for one, applaud the Home Assistant project for having the stones to put this in.
Yeah, and it definitely, I think, will improve the community security overall, which is a good thing for them. And as they make this a commercial product one day, because this has got to be the direction this thing's going when they try to make it a consumer product and not just a more advanced prosumer or enthusiast product.
Nerd product. Go on, you should say it. Nerd product.
It's a nerd product right now. But maybe one day they're going to try to sell it to average Joes who have bought all these smart devices and now they just need something to make it all work together. And, buy the $100 Home Assistant appliance. And you need these kind of things built in. And they just recently had a run-in with add-ons that were leaking information. So I could see why this is an area they're investing into. And I say good on them. And I think it'll be a smooth transition. There is also something worth looking into is they're working with k-anonymity, which is a Cloudflare hosted service. So Cloudflare's kind of proxying some of these requests to anonymize them. That's also made some people uncomfortable in all of this. But I did a read through of the setup and it seems like they've done a really, really solid job here. So we'll have a link in the show notes at selfhosted.show/40 for the Cloudflare information on that. If that has also perhaps gotten the hairs on the back of your neck up a little bit, it's worth reading about. We'll have information.
I'm super curious to hear what you all do for your local LAN password situations. Do you use a password manager? Are you like me and reuse the same password on every box? Let us know. selfhosted.show/contact.
Datadog.com/self-hosted. One word. Datadog.com/self-hosted. Go there, try it out, and get a free t-shirt. Datadog is going to solve problems and help you communicate them, analyze code level performance across your entire environment, and troubleshoot issues faster with Datadog. You see, Datadog's continuous profiler automatically collects information from your production servers all the time. So then when you're ready, when you need to, you can quickly look and analyze all of the data with minimal overhead and get, finally, a unified picture of your entire environment. Correlate code performance with server metrics and other monitoring data in real-time, beautiful dashboards. Datadog.com/self-hosted just to look at these dashboards. And then they have a lot of tightly integrated additions, add-ons, tracing, log management, and that continuous profiler that brings it all into one platform. That's Datadog. And imagine getting yourself a visual dashboard that you can use to communicate issues with your team. Developers to sysadmins, sysadmins to executives. Make plans, predict future performance, try it all out, and take advantage of their machine learning alerting. Datadog enables you to pinpoint the root cause of an issue faster than ever. So try their products out for free for 14 days by visiting datadog.com/self-hosted. For a limited time, if you start a trial and create one dashboard, you'll get some free swag, a Datadog t-shirt. And I miss swag. I miss event swag. I miss t-shirts. So go get one. Datadog.com/self-hosted. Create an account, get that trial going and get a t-shirt, and then begin visualizing your entire infrastructure. Datadog.com/self-hosted.
Listener Chris writes in, I run a number of services from my home server that are internet facing. I understand that the smart best practice is to minimize that as much as possible, but some of these things I want to access whilst I'm away from the house. Some of them are also used by family members, and so it's unavoidable on some levels. My question is this: how do I know if a service is hardened enough to raw dog it out on the open internet?
Wow. We're just going to, let's let that sit for a second. How do you know? How do you know if you can raw dog it? Yeah, I mean, I feel this one, Plex is one, Plex you kind of feel safe about, but how do you know about some of the lesser used ones, like Subsonic or something, right?
I think it's safe to assume that everything is porous. Everything.
Yeah, I hate, though, that the answer always is put it behind a VPN.
Why? I mean, with WireGuard these days, it's really the barrier to entry, as long as you don't screw up your subnets like I did, the barrier's pretty low.
But you have friends and family that are using your Plex server without connecting to WireGuard. Like Plex is such a great example, or Jellyfin, because you do often want to share with others.
That's true.
And I could see that being true with others as well. Nextcloud he mentions in here, but Baby Buddy, I'm not so sure about that. That starts to get a little more niche. And I hate to be the guy that just says, well, if it's big, you can use it publicly, and if it's small, you should hide it. But that's kind of a general rule of thumb that I follow. You try to figure how many eyes have been on it.
Another angle to consider is security by obscurity. Now, if you think that, you just have a random URL that you're using to access this service, and you've put it behind a reverse proxy, and probably these days you're using Let's Encrypt to generate a certificate for it so that you know that things are secure. Well, I've got bad news for you, I'm afraid. If you go to crt.sh and type in your domain name, you'll see every single certificate that's ever been issued by Let's Encrypt for your domain name. And so you think to yourself, okay, well now my super secret string that I came up with to hide this service is now out in the public domain. So really, it's not secret at all. One thing you could do to kind of work around that is use a wildcard certificate. That would kind of sort of help because it wouldn't, publish the actual string. But it just goes to show to me that, security through obscurity is really not, it's an illusion.
Yeah, and I was going to suggest throwing it out on like a VPS, like Linode, and run your software there for a bit on the public internet and monitor the logs. But you could run something for 6 months and nobody nibbles at it, and then on, day 1 of 7 months, somebody nibbles on it. It's tricky that way. And so it really, the only way to have full peace of mind, and that's what I've opted to do here in Lady Jupes, is just to have absolutely zero outside inbound. It's the only way I've found to be completely comfortable with it. I don't necessarily always follow that rule myself because some services like mail servers, web servers, media streaming servers, they have to be public by their very nature. So you have to hope that those just have more eyes and that they get a little more attention and that they've been a little more audited. But remember, logging is your friend. So if you ever suspect something's weird is happening, go check your logs. See if you have weird logins. See if you have somebody hitting your website all the time.
Use Datadog.
Yeah. Use something that will go through there and alert you. That absolutely could be a good way to go. It's a good question, though, listener Chris, because I'm sure it's one that people struggle with. So let us know what you out there would do. selfhosted.show/contact. Now, we have Joseph who writes in. He says, I have a bunch of those Tekken smart switches flashed with Tasmodo, and they work great. I have a need for smart switches to replace my wall switches, though. For example, like my kids' closet lights, which are always left on. I would also love to replace the controllers on our ceiling fans with smart devices, something that would toggle the light on and off and also set the fan to high, medium, or low, or even off completely. My preference would be for something I can self-host, non-cloud connected, open source software. Are there any devices which would actually fill this need or similar to the way the Tekken smart plugs do? What are your thoughts?
Well, this is an easy question. The Shelly devices are exactly what you're looking for, and I think we've talked about them on a previous episode. But just to recap, they're about the size of an Oreo cookie, and they go inside the light box behind the switch. So you don't change the switch itself, but this little cookie-sized box has a relay inside it. You need to do a little bit of wiring, so, mains voltage, be careful, or get an electrician if you're not comfortable. They make a few products. So they make a 2.5, which will let you do up to 2 switches in the same box. They make a single unit as well, and they make a bunch of other stuff that does like rolling shutters for garage doors and all sorts of stuff. So go to shelly.cloud and check out their stuff if you're interested, but it's exactly what you're looking for. And you can put Tasmotor on them. So Mahendra writes in the latest episode, you suggest File Run for a simple file browser. I wanted to suggest another minimalist alternative. It's very light with no database required at github.com/file browser. God, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It's very simple, easy to remember. Yeah, and it is just a web-based file browser that sits on top of a directory. Each user gets their own directory, and it's just a standalone app. Pretty simple. I like it. Even easier than the one we had talked about before. So I'm going to grab this and try it out.
It is nice. Yeah, I tried it out before the show, and I kind of wish I hadn't bothered with File Run now. This is, I think, my new standard kind of throw it up and forget about it remote access software. So yeah, great job. Thanks for writing in, Mahendra. Now, I've mentioned Chowdown a couple of times on the show before as a self-hosted recipe app. I still use it. I still love it. It stores all of my recipes in clear text files on disk. But there are some alternatives, and we've had a couple of listeners write in, and one of them is called Tandoor Recipes. What do you think of this one, Chris?
It looks really good. This, if anything, would probably get me to start doing something like this because it has a planning aspect, which is useful for a guy like me. I can do a little meal planning, but also has a sharing feature, and it's all on a progressive web app, which means my wife and I could share it like on our phones, which I think would be really nice. And then the other thing I would need is, and it does support importing from Chowdown, is import. And it has Chowdown import as well as Nextcloud Cookbook import, Mealy, Paprika, Saffron, and a couple of others it can import from. So I think it's easy to try out.
Now, we have mentioned this one previously because it goes by the name Vabine1111/recipes on GitHub. That's the repo it's in. I think the Tandoor name must be new. I don't know how old exactly it is.
Yeah, they are. It is a new release too. So that might be, maybe they did a name change.
But they are using MKDocs for their documentation. So I've got to give them a plus point for that.
Yeah, it says here that they're happy to announce they've released a new version which gives the application its well-deserved name and logo, Tandoor Recipes. So there you go.
It runs out of a Docker container. It will also run on Unraid, Synology, Kubernetes. You can do it manually as well if you want to. There's a bunch of interesting stuff about syncing and storage in their documentation. So it's going to take a lot for me to throw away Chowdown because I do genuinely really like it. And I've modified the CSS. So I've got some fuzzy search. You know how I love my fuzzy search.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, I've customized Chowdown for my own needs, but then maybe the grass is greener. Maybe I should try this one out.
I mean, it does have the import functionality.
Downside, though, is it needs a Postgres database. And I've already got it feels like a dozen different database containers running. Do I need another one?
That is a constant internal battle. And sometimes I'm just down to, who cares? Just run a whole bunch. You've got the resources. And other times, like the sysadmin in me is just not having it. It's just, you can't run 3 copies of Postgres. That doesn't make any sense. They're different versions. They have different security issues, different features. What are you doing?
And it's a recipes app at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like just having the files in clear text on disk feels more future-proof to me. So if this person loses interest in maintaining this particular app for whatever reason, I'm not up the creek without a paddle, so to speak.
That I think is a great feature of Chowdown. That kind of clear text backend gives me peace of mind. That's just it. Peace of mind for that kind of stuff.
And if Chowdown stops working for some reason, I can just pull it up in any text editor and it's still readable.
Yeah, it's almost as good as writing them down on an index card.
You know, you laugh at that, but I'm pretty sure if I asked my mum to go and find me a recipe for something, she would find it in less time than it takes me to fix. Oh, Chowdown's not working? Okay, well, let me just SSH in and do this, do that, do the other. And before you know it, 10 minutes later, you've forgotten that you're actually looking for a recipe, and then you go and order pizza instead, so...
Yeah, and meanwhile, she's got the index card ready to go. It's very true. There's something to that.
Mm-hmm.
A reminder, you can find our sponsor, Cloud Guru, on social media. They're just / a Cloud Guru. It's really easy, like on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, pretty much all the social media platforms, just / a Cloud Guru. Also, our members, thank you to our members, selfhosted.show/SRE. You support the show. You become our site reliability engineers. You get a limited ad feed and extra content, the post show. selfhosted.show/SRE if you'd like to support the show and become a member.
My wife's Cam 3 came in this week, so we're going to have a little chat about that today.
Yes, that's going to be the post show. I ordered a few of them, so I got thoughts.
Of course you did. So you can go to selfhosted.show/contact, and that's the place to go to get in touch with us. You can find me on Twitter @IronicBadger.
Oh, I'm there as well, at Chris LAS, and the show is at Self-Hosted Show.
On Discord, I'm at AlexKTZ. So thanks very much for listening, everybody. That was selfhosted.show/40.